Rochester Today with Andy Brownell and Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good morning and welcome to Rochester Today on a Tuesday. I'm Andy Brownell with Tom Ostrom. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Andrew.
Disappointed to say your team won, my team lost.
Yeah. Quarterback Love got our team down the field in the final seconds, close enough to get a field goal. And your team lost by a field goal in the final seconds.
Yeah. Some clock management mistakes made. But, Detroit's got a good team. So
yes.
It was good that, unlike some other teams who have faced the Lions, we did not get steamrolled. But it was one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda games.
Well, the Packers won against a top-notch team, too.
Our conference is shaping up to be the best in football right now.
Oh.
And then, of course, added sports. I don't know if you bothered to watch it, but the women's basketball, the Minnesota Lynx.
Yeah.
And a heartbreak of a game, and the coach.
It looks like they say a referee's error took it from them.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it was a bad officiating at the end of the game. But can't erase that, so I guess we move on, right?
Yeah.
What's in the mailbag?
Branko, a chart. Kamala is looking at the chart and saying, I did that. Everything's up. All these things are up. And the chart says what's up is gas prices, food prices, inflation, illegal immigration, wokeness, China, Taliban, world instability, cancel culture, fentanyl, crime, all that's up.
Take responsibility for your administration.
Yeah.
That was her line in that interview.
Yeah, right. This really happened. Remember the debate that Trump had, and he was fact-checked by a panelist who said that crime was down. They said, Trump, you say crime is up, you're wrong. Crime is down. The Babylon Bee's on top of that. And the FBI now has changed that crime is down and admitting crime was up. Statistical complexities, but crime is up. So the Babylon Bee says, the FBI director said, oops, we meant to say up. FBI Director Christopher Wray said, oh gosh, we meant to say that. We just made a mistake. And Democrats are flustered, and Republicans roll their eyes, and but again, a Babylon Bee humor says what happened.
I hope we can talk more about that later.
Yeah. This from Sean. Sean is a realty broker. You know, they have to know finance and law and statistics, and so he's a very bright man. And he said, Tom, I'm not seeing a lot of information on the constitutional amendment that's on the election ballot. I've read synopsis on Ballotpedia, but I'm not seeing opposing comments, which makes me wonder if there's something under the covers we have to be aware of before voting on this particular topic. He just is kind of suspicious of it. And he looked at the articles about it, and so did I. And Minnesota voters are to decide on extending the lottery revenue dedication for the Environment and Natural Resource Fund through 2050. And they're going to be asked to provide revenue for the state-operated lotteries that will go to this cause and improve it and see that this contribution to that cause. And the legislature's final version was approved in 2023, and in the Senate, the vote was 36-29, in the House, 89-41. And as Sean observes, more Democrats supported it than Republicans. An opponent of the program is Senator Steve Drazkowski, a Republican, and he voted against it. He disagreed with how the grants would be issued, saying, so what we are doing is we're doing it again. We're doing what we have done for the last 4 years or months. I mean, I'm not sure what that means. I might have written that wrong. But taking authority for appropriation from the legislative branch, giving it to the executive branch, that's what the bill does. And so Sean has asked us to think about that. Sounds good on the surface. It's rather complex.
It is complex. And I think one of the main criticisms I've read about it is that there are limitations on what this funding can be used for when you think of environmental projects. One of the biggest challenges facing the state right now is water. We're not the only ones. It's everywhere. Clean water. And a lot of that has to do with wastewater treatment facilities, septic tank systems, what have you, that take care of human waste, which can be very detrimental to water quality, you can imagine. And my understanding is that the money from this cannot be used for those sorts of projects. It can be allocated for more natural habitat type projects dealing with water quality. And the criticism is that with this source of funding, perhaps some of it should be directed to these wastewater, stormwater projects that affect clean water consumed by humans more so than the habitat projects do. But I understand the argument both ways. There's more money available for those types of projects and very limited amount of money available for natural habitat projects. So I think that that's why they wanted to put that firewall in there. But this fund is also used for all sorts of cultural activities as well. And you could criticize that, or you can see benefits from it. It depends on your point of view. The benefits would be in smaller communities, music festivals, all sorts of community gatherings that take place all year round that many people would say add to the quality of life in the state of Minnesota. And others see that as a boondoggle, not a use for tax dollars that should be privately funded. But those are my understandings of the major issues involved in extending the tax, which I suspect will pass quite easily.
Mm-hmm. I read, if I understood correctly, that if someone leaves it blank, doesn't vote on it at all, it's a no vote. I don't understand how that can work.
I believe you're correct, because it being a constitutional amendment issue.
I guess one less vote is what it means if you don't vote, but I guess I don't understand why it's a no vote if someone doesn't vote at all.
I'd have to do more research, Tom. I have a feeling you are. I think you're correct, but I'll have to check into that some more and report back.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic of it or how that can be calculated or if it should be calculated that way.
Okay. Is that it for the mailbag?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take our break. Back in just a moment. Rochester Today with T.O. Tom Ostrom's with us. I'm Andy Brownell. Well, it's News Talk 1340 KROZ AM at 96.9.
Rochester Today with Andy Brownell and Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good morning. Welcome back. More Rochester Today. Tom Ostrom and Andy Brownell. Tom, you are correct. I Googled it in the break. Failure to vote on a constitutional amendment will have the same effect as voting no on the amendment. You're right. Questions about the logic of that, I'm not sure. But I was confused a little bit too. I had mixed together this constitutional amendment with the sales tax towards environmental, cultural things that was approved a few years back. This is separate. This is the use of money from the lottery to fund drinking water source projects, water quality, lakes, rivers, and streams, conserve wildlife habitat, natural areas, improve air quality, expand access to parks and trails. It is the Environmental and Natural Resource Trust Fund using money from the Minnesota Lottery, not the sales tax portion that is also goes into another fund that can be used for similar projects as well as cultural initiatives. But okay. So if you don't cast a vote on that, when you cast a ballot, it's considered a no vote.
I don't even know how that can be calculated when they're counting ballots.
Well, they have the little dots that you fill in. If you didn't fill any dots, it would automatically default to a no.
Okay.
All right. Other Minnesota happenings?
Okay. From Bring Me the News, 9 students were injured in a school bus crash in Redwood County. That's in southwest Minnesota, the Redwood Falls area. A school bus crashed into a truck last week, and the Wabasso Public School District Superintendent John Fulton said the crash happened about 8:30 in the morning at an intersection, and students were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, but quite a trauma. And the Star Tribune reported the bus driver failed to yield before crashing into a Ford truck. And counseling services are available to students following the incident. I mention that because that's unfortunate, but I want to pay tribute to school bus drivers everywhere. That's a difficult job. It's very responsible, and there's a lot of skill driving those huge buses, especially in bad weather in Minnesota and bad road conditions and discipline problems. And a colleague of mine, we were talking about that one time, and he said, I drove a school bus part-time, he said, and on winter break once when I was a young teacher, and he said, I was coming down a hill, students were in my bus, we hit some ice. He said, I did a full circle and ended up right against the bridge railing. And he said, I called for help and people came, and he said, I resigned. He said, I couldn't take that responsibility. So we want to say that along with this incident.
I can sympathize with that. Yeah. That would have been very, very scary.
Yeah, boy. So the skill of the drivers and, well, all truckers and bus drivers, it's an important, responsible job. Minnesota News, the kind of people that law enforcement has to deal with and the kind of people that aggress on others, it's just frightening. A carjacker who attacked a mother and child is sentenced to prison. That happened in Minnetonka. That's a high-income area in Hennepin County. And the man was responsible for a string of crimes in 2023. A carjacking, again, attacking a mother and her child as they came onto her driveway and tried to steal her husband's car and then her car, and then she was attacked when she tried to intervene. Her son was attacked when he was trying to call the police. But they were trying to, and this involved men wearing hoodies over their face, and it was quite violent. And the victims called the police. They intercepted the fleeing cars and had a high-speed incident. And the man here that was arrested, it had a very long, violent rap sheet. So the kind of people that are around that do the kind of things to people, it's just frightening.
It is. I do remember that case as well. Very, very nice neighborhood. Minnetonka is associated with very nice neighborhoods. And if I remember correctly, they had followed her from a grocery store or something like that in order to attempt to commit this crime. It was very, very concerning.
Yeah.
And very unexpected in where it happened.
Mm-hmm.
But we had talked, I don't know, last time or the time before that about these young children committing crimes, youth crime, especially in the Twin Cities. and it seems rampant. Car thefts and robberies and even shootings occurring. And we think, oh, well, we're lucky here in Rochester. We've avoided that so far. Well, just over the past weekend, we had an incident in a city park where a group of teenagers got into a fight. Now, that's nothing new. Teenagers fighting has happened for generations and generations. But in this case, one of them apparently pulled out a gun and fired shots into the air. And it's suspected that the age of that person who pulled out the gun and fired into the air is 14 years old.
Mm.
And they got a description of a vehicle and found the vehicle and found the 14-year-old in possession of the gun, which had been stolen.
Mm.
And in another incident, we had a crash near Mayo High School where the teenage driver took off on foot after colliding with another vehicle. Thankfully, nobody seriously hurt, running off, and witnesses, again, thankfully, chased after this teenager and apprehended him before officers arrived at the scene and held him. 15-year-old driving a stolen car.
Mm.
So we're not immune from this either. It's becoming more and more commonplace here as well, that very serious crimes being committed by very young people.
Yeah.
Of course, a little different in the Twin Cities when you have 11-year-olds accused of doing similar crimes.
Yeah. Boy. Well, this is complicated too. And the Minneapolis City Council passes a carbon emission fees for 2025. And they overrode Mayor Frey's veto of it last week. It's a license fee schedule. It would charge the city's polluters based on carbon dioxide emissions. The Minneapolis City Council overturned Frey's veto on a 9-2 vote, and one council member was the lead author. He said expanding the city's existing pollution control registration fee program would charge the largest polluters significant amounts of money.
Yes.
But it would reduce the carbon dioxide emissions by 6%, they think. And Frey vetoed their decision, saying that a new fee cannot be legally implemented this year. It would likely constitute an unauthorized tax due to a state law saying cities may only implement fees to recoup their cost of existing fees. And he said, once again, we find ourselves in a needless state of limbo because the majority of the city council won't listen to our expert staff, and a short-term political win was favored over actually getting work done. And Minneapolis city attorneys say the fee can only be legal by tailoring the program so the fee collects according to the city's regulatory costs for processing registration fees, inspecting facilities, hiring staff to do it, and administering specific items. And Frey said, despite personally supporting the concept, we have to deal with businesses and consult stakeholders, and staff has to be hired, and this hasn't been done. And the council said it would advance legislation matching the fee schedule, and it's so complicated. I don't even know if I'm explaining it correctly, but Mayor spokesperson criticized the council decision for not going through proper channels. Instead of overriding the veto, said they could have gone ahead with a new directive, but you got to create a program, hire staff, do the fee study before implementing it, and that has not been done. Well, that sounds like something that could be challenged in court.
I think it certainly will be challenged. And there's two other ways to look at this. Okay, if you're going to collect this sizable fee for carbon dioxide emitters, these would be the ones paying the largest fees would be your industrial employers in Minneapolis. Granted, I imagine restaurants emit carbon dioxide with their, cooking mechanisms. I'm not sure it applies to them, probably a less significant amount. I think the end result of this, if it actually were implemented, would be just you would probably reduce carbon dioxide emissions because these companies that are involved in this would just shut down and move elsewhere if it's economically feasible for them to do it. You're doing nothing to actually control carbon dioxide emissions. You're just charging a fee upon an employer and making it more difficult for them to stay in business because the money being raised through this would not be directed at any sort of pollution control initiative. It's merely a bureaucratic collection of money to be put in to the general fund, which, according to the mayor, would be a violation of state law.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow, that's Minneapolis for you. We have to take a break for news already, Tom. We'll do that and come back in just a moment. Rochester Today, Tuesday, with Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340, KROC AM at 96.9
FM.
Welcome back, everyone. Good morning. It's Rochester Today, Tuesday. I'm Andy Brownell with Tom Ostrom. And time for national news, Tom. You start us out.
Well, we mentioned that Donald Trump attended the Al Smith dinner in New York City, and Harris didn't, and he was hilarious. Democrats are so angry at how good he was, they're trying to find out who wrote his jokes for him, but he delivered them beautifully at the Al Smith dinner, and the Babylon Bee was so impressed with his stand-up comedy with everybody that he said, Trump, they had a story, Trump replaces all the late-night comics on TV. and he and his first lady, Melania, who wrote an interesting book that's a bestseller, and Trump was so funny, like he turned to Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democrat majority leader, and he said, Chuck, your party is so woke that you might end up being the first woman Democrat president.
I heard cuts of it.
And then he served.
Schumer even laughed.
Yeah, he did. And then Trump served customers at a McDonald's drive-thru to make fun of Kamala, who claims she worked at McDonald's, but there's no proof of that. And so I see a picture of Trump leaning out the window at a McDonald's serving customers that came through, and the crowd was really loud and they really large, and they really enjoyed Trump doing that, and he enjoyed being there, and the staff enjoyed with him. And you think he's a man of the people. The Democrats and media tried to make him evil and nasty, and he's not. He's just who'd you rather have a beer with? You know, Biden, Harris, Waltz, or Trump, for crying out loud? And he was really successful at that drive-in too, and he had a fun time doing it. And I guess he worked the fry cooker or two, but there was a huge crowd there watching him, and a huge line of cars driving through as he leaned out the window to serve them. And the Democrats and the media are just thinking his skill is terrible, and how dare he do that, and why did he do it? Well, it's obvious why he did it.
Right. Well, and I saw headlines concerning this that, I don't know, talking heads on MSNBC or wherever were complaining that perhaps he violated campaign finance laws by giving away burgers.
Oh, really?
Like, good luck with that one. But going back to the Al Smith dinner, Jim Gaffigan, who's a comedian, who's pretty darn funny guy, I think. And, I would say he's probably a pretty liberal guy. But he really got some zingers in during that dinner too. Like referencing, I'm going to mess up the joke because I don't remember exactly what it was, but he made references to, fears of a coup, of a takeover, and undemocratic processes and everything else. And he made it very clear he was talking about the process the Democrats used to pick Kamala Harris to be their nominee for president.
Oh, wow.
And, the crowd laughed, but I guess he's catching some flack for that one. I thought, if it's for a joke, it was a pretty good joke.
Is he the one that imitates Waltz on Saturday Night Live?
Yes. Yeah. And he does a darn good job of it.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
The other aspect of this with Trump, you just brought this to mind. It was last Friday. I'm listening to ABC News, top of the hour news on this radio station, and my blood boiled. I couldn't believe it. It was one of the most atrociously biased pieces of reporting I have ever heard. I've heard a lot of complaints about ABC, and I've tried to, okay, they're not all that bad, but this, you know what? I'm done defending them. I really am. The report was some outfit, blog or something in the Beltline or Beltway made some sort of unsourced and unsubstantiated report that Donald Trump was skipping media interviews because he was exhausted on the campaign trail. So they immediately went to Kamala Harris to get her take on this, I don't know, rumor, I guess. And she just they gave her more than a minute of a 5-minute newscast. 1 minute to say, well, this surely shows you why Donald Trump isn't fit to be president if he can't even campaign, da-da-da. It was almost as if we were hearing a description of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And then they get to the very end of it, and they speak to Trump, and they give him maybe 10 seconds to go, I don't know what they're talking about. I feel fine. I'm making like 3 or 4 appearances a day. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, wow, that was bad.
Yeah, you're right. And some liberal media people are saying he has to have his cholesterol levels checked. Why don't we find out what that level is? And Kamala showed up at a gathering, and she was so disoriented and discombobulated, and only stayed there 6 minutes, and then ran off the stage. And some people wonder if she was hammered. But certainly
could have been dehydrated, could have been anything.
Yeah. The National Border Patrol Council endorses Trump at an Arizona rally, and the union president knocked Kamala Harris for her work as border czar. What she's destroying the border, destroying the nation, putting the nation in trouble. And he said, if we allow border czar Harris to win this election, we're going to have increasing murders, rapes, robberies, burglaries, every other crime. Only one man convicts it, and that's Trump, and we endorse him. We're breaking with our past practice of giving our first ever endorsement in a presidential primary. And the Border Patrol agents are saying, we will resign and retire in droves if she is elected. We're not going to try to do this job again with her. It's 4 years of hell. A lot of guys are retiring early, and there have been a lot of assaults on Border Patrol officers, bloody assaults. I've seen some videos as these migrants attack them and hurt them. But one Border Patrol agent said a lot of guys are going to retire if she's elected. If Trump wins, they'll stay because massive turnovers already have occurred, plummeting morale and suicides. That profession has suffered even suicides out of frustration, and the agency has shed 4,000 personnel since 2020, and it's just financial inducements are being paid to get Border Patrol to sign up or to stay on the job, but it's not really working, and so they've made their feelings clear about what they think. But she visited the Border Patrol briefly. I wonder if any of them had the courage to tell her that. I suppose not.
I suspect that in any event like that, the people who are chosen to appear with whatever candidate are those within the organization that their political leanings are known. In other words, they're cherry-picked.
Yeah.
And I think that goes, I think that's a universal thing, unless it's an impromptu appearance.
Yeah. But assaults are up. Border Patrol people are kicked and punched and knocked down and even bitten. And a female Border Patrol agent was attacked so hard that she had bite marks on her face, and her uniform was ripped. And that's not being covered in the media, evidently. But there's a long list here of examples of assaults on Border Patrol officers
I
by the
imagine
migrants.
it's horrible to try to recruit people for that job.
Yeah.
It would not be one. I think it would take a special person who would want to do that, especially considering the climate we're in right now.
And they're not allowed to keep people out and use force on them. The Babylon Bee earlier we mentioned had fun with the FBI revising its violent crime stats, and they revised them without much comment, and it's up to the FBI to explain what they've done. They haven't done it.
Well, they kind of did, but it's a nonsensical explanation.
Yeah.
So they went from. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was just saying, also, though, it's extraordinarily complex how they acquire the statistics and what they do with them and what police agencies send or don't send. But there's some politics involved, too, but there's also some statistical complexity involved. But the results and the claims of statistics can well be argued.
So they went from a report of a 2.2, something like that, 2.1% decrease in violent crime between 2021 and 2022 to revise it to a 4.5% increase in violent crime for that same time period, which is the most recent that we have data available for. Now, they'll probably be coming out with the next year's number in the next few weeks, probably before the end of the year. That would be the 2023 crime stats, but they're not finalized. So then you argue, there's so much political hay was made with the release of those statistics to suggest that, you're all wrong. It's just your perception. Mm-hmm. Crime is going down. And everybody is out there going, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And apparently the way this worked, Tommy, you mentioned police departments and other agencies that don't report on time because of all the complexities involved. And a lot of that is the reporting requirements. And some of them are major metropolitan areas in this country, which are high crime centers. So what the FBI and the Justice Department does with these quote unquote preliminary numbers is they just fill in a number. They take a guess.
Mm-hmm.
For these cities that haven't reported.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably not a really good practice.
No. And then some reports are deliberately low for political reasons. Either police departments don't want to say how bad it is or the politicians don't want to say. But a Gallup survey said the public thinks what you just said, Andy. Crime is up. 92% of Republicans and 58% of Democrats in a Gallup poll said crime was increasing, and likely voters say violent crime is getting worse, not better. And a Gallup poll in March said crime and violence is America's second biggest concern after inflation and the border.
Yeah, it is almost like Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain or whatever it is, because the real statistic to look at is crime prior to the pandemic and then crime today. If you look at that, the increase is somewhere near 20% for violent crime. That's an extraordinary increase in violent crime over the space of 5 years. And so you could argue year-to-year fluctuations all you want when they're minor fluctuations, but the upward trend is steep. It has been steep now for 5 years. Okay, we have to take a break. Back in a moment. More Rochester Today on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9.
Rochester Today with Andy Brownell and Tom Ostrom on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
It's Rochester Today, Tuesday. I'm Andy Brownell. Tom Ostrom's here, and the Israelis scoring a major victory. I think it was Friday or Saturday with the confirmed death of the Hamas leader who was behind the October 7th attacks, Sinwar. And this is what really gets me about this, Tom. This guy, hardcore terrorist, and you have Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority singing his praises, calling him a martyr for the cause. And you have the president of Turkey, a NATO ally, saying the same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That he was a great leader, a martyr.
Yeah.
Just frightening.
Yeah. And Turkey is a Muslim nation, and that leader is, of course, Islamic. Well, Netanyahu has promised retaliation. A drone was fired at his residence outside of the capital, and he wasn't there, and his wife wasn't there. I guess some damage was done. 2 drones were fired at that building, and the Israelis hit one of them. The other one got through. And Netanyahu says, we're not going to stop, but we're going to continue our retaliation. And you wonder, this is the first time, evidently, they've tried to kill a political leader. Maybe it's time Netanyahu tried to get a mullah or two, finding out where they live and give them a scare. But had Netanyahu followed Biden and Secretary of State's advice, Secretary of Defense advice, these people wouldn't have been hit. They wouldn't have been killed. So Netanyahu isn't going to stop, and he's not going to take advice. But now the United States was upset enough by this that they are sending a defense system and American troops to Israel. American troops are going to go there to help them operate the new defense systems that they're going to send to them. So the United States is then criticizing Israel, but standing by, assisting it.
The other aspect of this whole situation in the Middle East, which is very disturbing, is I'm sure we can cover this more on Thursday because it's relatively new news and I haven't read that much about it, but apparently there's a leak in either the Pentagon or the intelligence communities that some top secret documents concerning the Israeli plans of retaliation against Iran for the missile strikes leaked. It was put out onto the internets, and the fear is these documents aren't all that harmful, but still the question is what other documents might be out there that have been provided by somebody in our government to apparently undermine the Israelis' plans for responding to the Iranians.
That's right. And the weaponry that's being sent to Israel now, it's called a Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System to reinforce Israel's defenses, but that American soldiers are going to go there, military, to help them operate it. Now you wonder what happens if there's an assault on them and they are killed by Iranian sources or Iran directly. So what would our reaction be to that?
Well, the Iranians, through their proxies, these militias have killed U.S. service members in Iraq and other places already.
And Iran has warned the U.S. not to get involved directly. Iran said we will retaliate. So our troops will be at risk operating those systems. And I guess it's truck-mounted launchers and interceptors and radio and radar equipment. But 95 soldiers are needed to operate one of those systems. And you will have to see what happens there. And Iran says it will retaliate if these things continue. Because Israel still hasn't hit Iran for its, and now it's evidently trying to assassinate the president. Yeah.
All right. With that, we better go. If you have anything else, we'll save it for the next time we get together. All right, Tom?
Yes.
Thank you again, of course, and we will chat with you on Thursday morning with more of Rochester Today on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9